I think we should. Hello and welcome to DrupalCon Global. I hope all of you are having a great time. I wish we could do this in person, but virtual it is. I am Archita and I'm a senior user experience designer. I work with QED 42 and I have Dipen with me co-presenting today.
Hi everyone, welcome to DrupalCon. I'm Dipen, I'm CEO of QED 42. We build digital experiences for our customers using design and technology. And I'm a software professional by training, but I got introduced to design and I think very differently about it. Excited to share our learnings. Over to you, Rachita.
So today we're going to talk about a few steps we can take and a few tips based on our learnings and experience of selling design in the past years. We're going to share some things that work for us, and let's dive deeper. A successful UX design provides many advantages for both your customer and the business. If users enjoy using your application and browsing through your site, they're more likely to come back to it and stay there longer. And this is more likely to lead to a sale. Without a quality user experience, your sales will suffer. And ultimately, a healthy conversion rate is the end result most businesses are looking for. Being aware just how greatly UX can have an impact on this metric ensures that adequate attention must be paid to UX, user experience design. Furthermore, in this article where this statistic is mentioned by Forbes, user experience is mentioned as a key tool for influencing the leads visiting your site in that limited time where opinions are formed and decisions are made. Now, seeing that figure of $300 million, it is no question that the company in question here is Amazon. The simple story of changing a button eliminated major frustration of users by not having to register to complete a purchase. Registration was made optional, and the button text was changed to more welcoming, continue. And this made Jared Spool a huge name in UI UX design. But unfortunately, many businesses fail to fully understand the importance of UX design. Or should we put it this way, are we failing to create that impact, and are we failing to effectively sell UX design to our prospects? It's just like looking at the prospects and clients as customers. Are we bringing value to them? Are we understanding what are immediate values to them? Are we aligning to their business objective when we target and we want to create that impact to be able to sell? A lot of us rely on a standardized sales model to sell UX design in our agencies. So a traditional sales model is where it's seller-centric, where it's an approach that relies on grabbing attention of the people and telling them why they should be interested in what you offer, and then expecting them to make a purchase or try your services. But is this going to suffice to sell design? What are the things we can adopt from the traditional sales model, and what are the things that we can add? So we've all been in meetings where we talk about and we want to come up with a successful sales strategy. When someone in the room says that we can sit around here or keep on planning, or we can get going and do something. And rightly so, strategy without execution is a waste of time. But execution without strategy can land you in a chaos. Before we dive deeper into actionable steps to sell design, let's discuss some things we need to do to set that stage. Dipen, over to you.
Thanks, Archita. You move the slide, yeah. Sorry about the conch shell background. My neighbors are playing a conch shell. It's evening time. Yeah. So like we said, like we need some plan. How we're gonna reach our goals and sell UX effectively. And before we make that plan, before we make that strategy, I think one important thing to these are more like macro questions that the business, the management, the agency leadership has to think about. Like basically, what is the design practices, the practice that you have, what's the positioning in the company and obviously in the industry, and what's the vision, and some of the parameters to think there is, like is that your agency's cash cow? Like, is it the primary service that you offer, or it's an enabling service in relation to other practices? Like, it could be your primary service could be marketing, content, or technology. And, you know, so we need to assess, like, where does it sit in this practice alignment in terms of revenue, and what is its alignment or relationship with the other practices. So personally at QED, like QED started as a technology company, implementation company. We did Drupal projects and other open source projects. And what we were finding again and again is that, so typically what would happen is that we'll get a requirement from a customer, and typically the designs were done with a different agency, and we would come in to implement those designs. And what we realized, with time, is that our customers are looking for end-to-end solutions, especially around the comfort and trust working with us. The second thing was, also that what is in terms of the customers were also coming back and saying that we would like you to manage design, and we realize that it puts us closer to the customer. Sorry, and in terms of influencing decision or strategy or digital experience as a whole, it puts us strategically closer to the customer. So this was our interest in setting up a design practice, and you need to find those answers for yourself. And another thing to think about is, what are the goals for your practice, and what's your vision? What are the short-term goals and long-term goals, and where do you see your practice going in terms of, it could be the wish list. It always is healthy to think about, having some benchmarks in your mind that, it'll be great if we are in that market, or deliver that kind of work, that role model agencies. And those are healthy things to think about. And before you get into that planning and asking those questions, especially if it's a new, or like strategy is new for you, this planning of how you're going to sell services, you have to define a period of performance, in the sense that, how I'm going to measure it, how frequently will I measure it? Because from our past mistakes, I think we were also changing things very quickly, and in a later experiment, we realized that we just didn't give it enough time. And it obviously varies for a lightweight strategy compared to a heavyweight strategy, which I'll talk about. But you need to have some period of performance in your mind. So with that, sort of very high level question set, let's see what are the specific steps that we can take to define our strategy. So the first is to identify your service offerings. And what I mean by that is, your skill set is not your service. And especially for a smaller agency or a smaller practice, the context switch is just not worth it if you, like, and what I mean by that is, like, maybe from a skill perspective, you can do branding and, sort of illustrations, graphic design, and other things. But the context switch in managing and planning for all the service offerings and dealing with different kind of customers is not worth the effort, is something that we realized, and it's kind of cliche to bring a Steve Jobs quote in a design talk, but I couldn't resist it. And the example that I want to draw is like when he returned to Apple in '97, he drew a 2x2 matrix of consumer and pro, and for all the more like all the lines, like the MacBook Pro, and like just build one model. And this allowed Apple to focus at that critical juncture when it was struggling. And I think it's especially relevant for small and medium to define your service offerings. So in our case, it was, and we've gone through that cycle. In our case, it was UX UI that we chose on because it aligns very well with our sort of other practices, other services, which I talked about just a little bit later. That at that time and even now, like we see design practice as an enabler for business growth. Though recently we have been successful in that being the primary touch point of a client coming in. You have to define, like you have to answer those questions for your organization before getting into that. The next thing is like the things that we can draw from a typical sales planning or strategy is like, building this ICP. Again, it's an exercise in focus that, how do you segment your ideal customers? So a lot of it will be from your history, from delivering these services, if you have been delivering these services, as to, what are your strengths, what are your expertise, where have you been able to demonstrate success and deliver results for your customers. So those are obviously things that you should focus on and align it with like industry, align that with industry, and basically do this matchmaking with your expertise and your ideal customer. It could be regional. If if your best work comes out in local region, then that's something should be a criteria, because that'll allow for more conversion and success. Similarly, industry and kind of project size, revenue. So once you build that, like, this is a typical user persona exercise that we do in UX projects as well, but just doing it for a business goal. The next would be, once we have that service offerings, we had been doing this, like, sending this dump of portfolio or showcase to every client that, okay, this is what we have done, and these are our design projects, and they had no sort of correlation in terms of the flow and in terms of to generate that relatability with the customer. So once you have those ICPs, I think it takes some time, but aligning your collaterals. One of the things, example from our experiences, the case studies, we were doing it very visually because that's how we would do. But eventually what we realized is that it has to be a mix of, because what we wanted to get is more hardcore UX projects and sort of getting into design systems with mid to large organizations. And if we don't do the business objective alignment, that we might lose the interest of the customer. So we brought in those problem statements and what was the business objective, what were the specific problems, and how did we solve them, how did design solve it, and that kind of alignment. And same in your marketing, and same in your other collaterals that you manage, also in your process. Like, working with a startup is different than working with an enterprise, and so on and so forth. So that your collateral has to match your target audience and your service offerings. Another specific to think about is your pre-sales team. Like what? So if you've got, like, once you've got the lead, how do you service that lead? Like, right from coordinating, getting it your CRM or in your inbox, and then how do you take it forward, and what kind of roles And Archita will share later as to some tips around it and like, what to do before meeting the customer and stuff. But what, um, and every lead is unique. Every lead, your pre-sales team has to be dynamic. But just something to think about, like a framework that you need different expertise depending obviously on the size and the lead qualification and the requirements. You need to have roles like a sales coordinator, which is a typical sales role, and then if it involves like end-to-end, like a design experience platform with technology, then you have a technology expert, and then a design. So because the reason I say that is that because like especially when problems have to be thought about from a business perspective, a conversion perspective, or from a customer's objective perspective, it's usually a unified solution that works out. Like we just pitching design system or component design or component library for every customer doesn't work. You need to talk in terms of specifics. You need to talk in terms of what their business problems are. And for that, you need a diversified team coming from different backgrounds, especially if you need to do, design thinking or transformation exercises around the product. Another thing, while you're setting the team, is to set up a RACI, like the boundaries as well, like what each person's role on the pre-sales team is, and what do they facilitate and what is expected from them in terms of you know in terms of solutions or pitching. For example, if it's a design heavy proposal, then a design coordinator should be taking lead there. So defining that RACI is typically a short form for responsible, accountable. We use in project management, responsible, accounted, consulted, and informed. And have that a lightweight RACI for your pre-sales team, and also define key responsibility areas of your pre-sales team. I think that really helps. That framework, depending, obviously this could change and become lighter depending on the size of the deal and everything, but having a framework in place definitely helps. The next would be is once you have, so yeah, once we have identified these things and we have a basic structure sort of set. This is mostly like an insight that we had from our experiences. I think what really helps is selling for objective alignment. Like the thing that I said about no matter how many portfolios and showcases and case studies you send to the customer or showcase and pitches, but those are good for introduction. But if you don't soon get the conversation into the problem solving mode, you tend to lose the customer, no matter, and might not be a reflection on your services or expertise, but it's definitely something the sales process should cater to. And the sooner you get to discussing problems, the better it is. The other thing that we've learned is like it's very important to sell the experience, and the reason I say that is a lot of customers in their line of questioning in their introduction meet, and also as part of some of the exit surveys that we did with our customer, comparing us with their previous experience, we realized that for known or unknown reasons, for better or for worse, the working with design teams is not as predictable. This is what we found out and realized. For customers, they found like be it timeline delays or like opaqueness of the process. They had concerns around that. So we realized that it's very important to tell the customer as part of the sales process that what will it be like to work with us in terms of very specific things, in terms of like which tools are we going to use, what kind of process are we going to use for the project, and what kind of feedback mechanism, what kind of cadence on reports like updates and stuff like that. And also, like, whenever there's need, we also need to educate them. And I think that's another learning for me, especially, like, when you educate somebody, um, even if they don't buy from you then, and if you bring it in your sales process, like giving them solutions, telling them specific, rather than just sending, like, we do design system, we do this, we do component design, we use pattern library and stuff like that. I think if we can recontextualize and educate them why we use a design system, it's for long, for what are the benefits of design system or component design, or what do you get out of design thinking, and, like, do you really need it or not? And I think that has helped us a lot. I think, even if not immediately, but we have had customers returning and trying that out with us. The other, sorry. So the next step is, once we have the service offering alignment and we have the ideal customer profiles, and we have our aligned collaterals, I think the next is to devise your marketing strategy and what has to change in that. Like, what are your channels? Like, if you're doing more illustration, branding, logo work, then channels are Dribble or other uh, showcasing platforms. If you're doing, where your communities are, where are your customers? Are your customers more on LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter, for that matter? Defining your channels, figuring that out in context of the exercises that you've done so far, and then defining the content strategy as well, in terms of if you want to work on long-term product UX projects, then your content strategy has to reflect that. If you are selling a process, then you need to have content around what does the process entail. If you're selling redesign, then have content around that. These things, uh, in fact, till not long back ago, we were doing this very ad hoc, and uh, once and since we have changed that, we see uh, better results in terms of, like, our existing customers, the feedback that we've got, like, they're reading that article or helping them, or in general the focus of the team, and has been better in terms of everyone aligned as to what we are sharing, with what intent, the frequency, and then very standard content strategy stuff. So what frequency are you gonna post things with, and what are your, how you're measuring it, and also, like, are you attending events and conferences, are you speaking at them, and so forth. And so we go further, like, so the basics is to set up your social media profiles, and Archita, can you move? So, set up your social media footprints, and then I think this is basic that we do, but align it with your content strategy. Uh, that is very important. Another thing that we found useful is that it's very important to keep and this, I think, it's a no-brainer in common sense, but it's important to be in check with the industry, the design, the service community in general. Like, uh, not only in terms of where the conversation around conversion, design thinking, all of these are going, but also what we realize is that it's also important to keep in sync with the terminology. You might call them buzzwords and everything, but, like, I tend to think of them as terminology that everyone can understand. So we were not using those, and I don't have any specific measure of how things have improved since then, but we feel more understood, I feel, when and doing the subsequent work on explaining those things. Like, if you're talking about design thinking, and what does it really mean for the customer. So this is important, like keeping in touch with your industry and aligning yourself there. The next is like newsletters is something that I think is the most hated channel, but you find it, I think it's very effective. And just one thing that it's just a quick tip that though we start with, building our outbound databases when you're doing newsletters, like, it's also important. Uh, One insight that realizes like if you also keep your past customers as a cohort, there are a lot of times, irrespective of you won the client or lost the deal, if you keep them in loop, they do want to hear. We have seen conversation resuming by keeping in touch. And another thing is cross-selling uh, through practices. Like if you have like a like for in our case technology, implementation in technology was a major practice, and we were introducing design to them. And I think distributing across practices is also an if like kind of a very converting hack that we found. And from a content perspective, I think just uh, at least our reasoning here is that other than the services and the work, the case studies and selling your services, I think if you can also include that how you work, especially if you're in your analysis, you found that to be like an important factor for a customer converting, then we started including those. And again, like we haven't had a conversion as specific to that, but I think uh, uh, customers want to listen, uh, hear that how you work and include that in your newsletters as well. This is something that we did for you. And the next is very important is identifying with the community, like being a primary Drupal agency, we identify to the Drupal community. And uh, it's not a surprise that even like, I think our largest lead source is Drupal.org marketplace, because we contribute back to the open source community. And yesterday there was a session around, why is it important for organizations to contribute? So I think those uh, same principles apply to um, the design practice as well. Like, so Archita joined the Claro admin UI team. And not only, there was a lot of learning around pain points of, Drupal content editors and administrators and who manage Drupal sites, and, getting those learnings back into the, team and the practice. But uh, also, if you keep contributing, you build a reputation that allows a customer to trust you, or removes that friction to a certain extent in trusting you. Like if somebody has a budget, like you would usually, they would want to go with somebody who has those community credentials. So I think embedding yourself in a community and contributing, um, giving your knowledge back and increasing your share of voice, which is another thing that we need to think about, like in terms of, we need to increase our share of voice. So be it speaking at conferences and or in your meetups or in communities, that is important. And at the same time, like, uh, when we're gauging the pulse of the industry, aligning ourselves in those as well. And uh, you can showcase your community contributions, or you can share your knowledge through sessions. And I think all of these really help in sort of like these kind of leave breadcrumbs for you, for your customers to see, and we've seen it to have a positive impact. And if everything works and you get the first lead, just one point before I finish and hand it over to Archita. I think lead qualification is something that is very, very important. This is, we've ignored that and we wasted a lot of time. Is there a service alignment? You always get tempted with a new lead, and obviously, like if you have the expertise and you have available capacity, and if that's giving you good revenue, you might pursue it. But it's very important to think about leads as also context switches and qualify them before you pursue your leads. Some of the every agency might have their own parameters. Like some agency might want to increase their direct customers compared to working with other agencies, or it depends on available capacity, whatever ICP is in project size and budget. But my request is just to keep it as part of your process. I think it really helps, and by optimizing time for you to do other things. You don't have to pursue a bad lead or a lead that will not convert. And even if it converts, it's not in your interest. So with that, I think I'll hand it over to Archita.
Thanks, Dipen. All right, looks like we're all set now. We've set the stage to dive deeper into actionable steps we can have. So we'll talk about first, for any conversation about value to be successful, you need a framework. Principles and values create that framework for any conversations you're probably going to have with the prospect. Now, putting the customer at the center of your values means you're always arguing for the objective value of the customer and not customer experience, and not about individual subjective opinions. Now we'll check three scenarios of what we can do to make the most of it and have a great impact. The first one being before you meet the client. What are the preparations you could do? It's always good to be prepared with a set of questions relating to client, product and market, content, users, competition, design. It's important to effectively use the time in hand to gather all necessary information, and it's also equally important to keep the conversation interesting when you meet the client. So it's always good to have these questions addressed, some questions addressed before you see them in real. So you can either send this through the sales team, or if there is like a mediator, so you can also package this and send it through them. And also the client is going to give you that extra engagement score if you package your work well, like where you engage directly with the client. And if you're sending up like these questionnaires, so now you see that link, you can access like 6 questionnaires, sets of questions that cater to this 6 categories. We use some, it depends on the client again, on the service again, on the project again, and you can pick some questions or use all. It largely depends on that. The next is to identify some primary struggles and pain points your prospect is already expecting to come to you with. So if you do that before you meet the client, you end up already being prepared with what they're going to ask. So you can focus more on maybe one of something that they haven't looked. So if you keep being prepared beforehand and addressing all the pain points that they're coming to you with, makes you appear more confident when you finally meet them. And also, if you already know the pain points they are looking for at, or they're coming to you with, you can personalize your collaterals before you see them. So it's not important, like Dipen said, that we had a portfolio that we'd dump the portfolio at everyone, and it wouldn't necessarily cater to their problem, business goal. If you personalize your collaterals, it could be as per the industry sector. Maybe you've already worked in the industry sector, your next prospect you're going to meet is in, or it could be, for example, a design system. Maybe they have like a huge scalability possibility, or it's a big project with a big impact. You can have your design systems in place, or the style guides, or any kind of solutions that you've already done in the past, provided your consumers in the past, your clients. You can package them and personalize for the prospect. Doing a quick design audit will help you create that mental map of their business objective. Keeping check and time, I'll quickly run through the points here. So you understand the business goal, and then you of course know that they're going to come forward with their weaknesses to you. But if you keep the strengths, if you look at the things they're absolutely doing right, but there's some improvements that they can do in the things they're doing right, you can put forward yourself as a thought leader in the discussion when you finally have the first interaction with the client. So the first important thing when you have this call with the prospect is to put the focus on them and their business goals. It's usually our instinct is when we go on that sales call is that we want to tell them that how we are good and how we are better than others to solve their problem, and how we have done that before, the learnings we have had in the same kind of project before, our experience. But it's always good to target the client, to keep the client and their business objectives as the center of the conversation. You can always put in some comments like, oh, we got this award, or we did this. That can be there, but it should mostly revolve around the client. Now, being able to communicate the experience they will have with you, rightly, Dipen has already covered that point, where we want to put forward the experience that they can have with us, because we think that this is like a tiny point that the clients might not really care about, but trust me, they do. And in fact, they do every week, or every step at every sales process, every step in the sales process. It's like the sales process is a window into how the actual delivery of the project will be like. How will that happen? So clients are always evaluating you, and if we fail in the sales process, they are more likely to not buy your services. Now, establish yourself as a thought leader. When the clients are coming to you and they are expecting to work with experts in their field, which is design, which is UX, and it's important to have a clarity of what their business goal is. And if you do not do that, if you do not have that, you will not be able to suggest solutions that cater directly to their business goals. And like, being a thought leader would probably not just be using the buzzwords around. It can be as simple as a question, as a genuine question. That question that really makes them think, step back and think that, this is something I didn't think about. It could be about using a new technology, or using a different direction or concept, or different design approach. Right. So when you have that first interaction with the client, sell the design sprint. Every client would want to see, like we at QED42, we believe to show and not tell. So if you meet the client and they're very happy with the collaterals you've arranged, it's good. But if they do not, ask them if, there is a possibility that when we're talking to someone who is really new to the whole process or philosophy of the design process, and ask them that if they are available for a 1 hour or 2 hours exercise, right? That we call it a design workshop, where you meet with the stakeholders and show them that the principles of a design sprint are very effective. And when you meet them and they do see that their project or their business goal is broken down into so many sub goals, and you're actually revolving your findings around their challenges, they will believe in the design sprint, and you will finally be able to sell that design sprint. So there have been cases where the project has been so big that we wanted to do this design sprint anyway, the design pitch, because we really wanted to get that project. So even if the prospect is not buying the design sprint, you end up doing it anyway for them. So I'll quickly go through the process of the design pitch sprint that we do. We do not look at giving a design pitch saying that we're giving you a home page. We are redesigning your product page, your services page. We try to focus on goals. We define their overarching goal, and then we break that down into sub goals. So that happens in the first and 2 days. Of course, okay, I'll just try to put that. Do make sure you tell your prospects that you're going to take the time of their decision makers only for the first or the second day. They really like to see this, that you have this balance between integrating with the decision makers and also pulling this off on your own in the third, fourth, and fifth day. So coming back to defining the goal and breaking that down into sub goals, we break that down into sub goals, and we show the whole map of what are the goals that we'll be addressing, ambitiously and practically pick up 1 or 2 sub goals and try to solve the problem there. So we're not actually giving them a home page or about us page or a services page. We're giving them components or a feature list. We're giving them real solutions, and the best would be if you can validate them. It would be even if you have like 5 people to test with, that's okay. Okay, that's a quick link to a more descriptive process of this sprint that we follow. You can take a look. It has a description of the steps. And when everything goes well, you onboard them as equal stakeholders. Every prospect doesn't want to give their product completely in your hand. They do want you to act like experts, but also they want you to incorporate their feedback and integrate. Create that feedback loop mechanism. Involve them like they're real equal stakeholders in your design process. This will really help you do that and deliver and keep that transparency. And love your clients. I think if you turn the funnel upside down, it says that if you make your clients happy, they're going to lead the leads to you, and who you can then turn into your clients or get their attention. This is again an exit survey that we have. So that quick link will take you to the exit survey with some questions that we do. So we have 2 minutes. These are some don'ts which you shouldn't do. And yes, do remember your client's name in the meeting. That's a weird trick that always works. Circling it back to the 3 selling objectives, Dipen.
So I think, again, from the strategy, sell for objective alignment, it's important that you, solve their problems. That's why they want to have you on the team. And, you might have your own ideas of what selling means at that stage, but if you can establish problem solving, that'll be the biggest winner. Sell the experience, how you work, how will be more transparent for them, how will they interact with you, how will they give feedback, and in a lot of cases it's looks simple, but a lot of cases that's what their concern are. And sell through education, like incorporate in your marketing and try to educate your customers about different solutions, and I think they'll be more likely to buy from you. There's some questions, but how do we do that? Thanks a lot. So there was, can we take some questions?
Yeah, sure. I think we have a minute, we can.
So there was a question on how much sales discovery work do you do for free? So we do it if there's a specific, we do some of it. Like Chita mentioned, there was a big project and we saw it as a growing account, and the scope was wide, so we did a workshop for free, and there was a customer that we really wanted, also for our technology team to get onboarded. Like I said, one of the biggest incentive for QED was that it opens the channel design, and design is closer to the customer, so you're closer to the budget as well. So we have done some of it for free in strategic cases, and in some cases where the alignment is not there, we say no. There's another question when selling UX software.
I think if the video it ends, I think everyone can just drop in a private message to us, and we'll promptly respond to all of the questions. It's Archita Arora and Dipen Chaudhary.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for listening. Thank you. Have a great DrupalCon.
Yeah. Bye.